Dear viewers, many thanks for joining us. This is our special edition on the current issues of the country. We are going to have a webinar discussion with technical matters and diaspora participation on the Grand Ethiopia Renaissance Dam. I have two guests today with me. My guest today is Dr. Tirusew Asefa. Dr. Tirusew Asefa is a registered professional engineer with the state of Florida, a diplomat of the American Academy of Water Resources Engineers and a fellow of the American Society of Civil Engineers. He currently chairs of the Florida Water and Climate Alliance. My second guest is Tebabu Asefa is a social entrepreneur, mentor, motivator, speaker of the Ethiopian Diaspora, Grand Ethiopia Renaissance Dam Committee members who are currently working in public awareness creation regarding the Grand Ethiopia Renaissance Dam. He's also co-founder of U.S. Africa Diaspora Business Council and champion of the change awarded by the White House, U.S. America. To begin with, as one expert and professional engineer, how can you explain the Grand Ethiopia Renaissance Dam project at this moment? I mean, the overall construction of the dam and its technical progress. In general, what has been done so far? Thank you. This question is for Dr. Tirusew Asefa.
Thank you for having me today. I appreciate that. When you look at the Grand Renaissance Dam progress, actually it's progressing quite a bit. For the last year, as many of you know, that we have the first filling, and that's basically a big milestone. So for the first filling, we're able to put 4.9 billion cubic meters. And then next year, the plan is to put an additional 13.5 billion cubic meters as well. That will give to 18.5 in total. So there is a couple of things that needs to happen between now and next year, and that is that they need to make it the central block higher. That's where you see overflow today. And then also they have to construct on the side as well. So they have to raise that to up to 595 above mean sea level rise. And then on the side also they have to raise up to 606. This will allow them to be able to impound enough water for the next cycle. The reason for that is if they impound that much water, then at least they can test as well as produce using two turbines to produce electricity. Now, Ethiopia have flexibility in terms of when they want to generate electricity, because then it's the decision to pass through the turbine or not. But there is not much flexibility in terms of impounding the water. That's the reason for that is that they have a short window of summer season, about 3 to 4 months. I'm talking about next summer, basically starting August. So they need to have that done from now on. So once they have that, if they decided to test a little bit late, that's fine. If they decided to test a little bit early, that's fine as well. But holding the water is it's very important, because if they don't hold this water next year, then they have to wait 1 more year, effectively prolonging the time that Gerd will be operational. So they have achieved quite a bit. From my experience, I can see that there's a lot of things happened already, but this year as well is the most critical one in terms of having able to hold that enough water and then ready to test. So when you make it ready to test as well, remember that you need all the connection to be ready. You can't just generate electricity and sit there. I know that some of the work has been done in terms of bringing it to the national grid. So there is a lot of things going on in parallel. So I would think they are progressing pretty good from what I see.
Well, in order to clear for the international community why Ethiopia is constructing the Grand Ethiopia Renaissance Dam project, this question is for Mr. Tebabu Asefa.
There is two components to it from what I see it. First and foremost, thank you very much for this opportunity. And I think to me, water and power as a natural law, it is a human right issue. We're all entitled to water. We're all entitled to power, however it comes. And in the case of Ethiopia, utilizing her natural resources for the benefit of her citizens to provide water and power to her people is Ethiopian's sovereign right. So, from the two perspectives, fundamentally, Ethiopia has to harness the natural resources within her boundaries as her sovereign right to provide the basic necessities or human rights issues, as I said earlier. So, for two reasons, it is Ethiopians' human right and Ethiopian government sovereign right to produce water and power. If you use the example, I'm looking at the data we Aspire produced to provide a comparative analysis of the water and power utilities for both Ethiopia and in Egypt. Currently, Egypt has been able to provide 100% power to her citizens. By comparison, Ethiopia only 41% of Ethiopian population gets power. In the same case, in water, it is 44% and 100%, 44% for Ethiopia and 100% for Egypt. So in a nutshell, without getting into the technical, which is also important, we'll talk about it in the second layer, the technical and the historical, the treaties, without even going there. Basically, fundamentally, it's a human right issue. It's a sovereign right issue. And that has to be known by all stakeholders, first and foremost.
Doctor, I understand you are part of a volunteer group called We Aspire, who is actively working on the Grand Ethiopia Renaissance Dam. Could you please explain about this non-profit group, please?
Thank you. Yeah, We Aspire is a group of professionals that get together, and this is basically a think tank group. The idea is that through facts, through data, trying to educate the public, basically. It has different missions in terms of which pillars of subject it takes, but at this time, it's working actively in Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. Typically, what the group does is, like I said, these are volunteer professionals, so we provide facts, information, and people also may not be aware some of those. Technically, for example, if you talk about me, I'm working on climate and water resources. It's important. There is a lot of technical terms. There is a lot of science behind it. But how you convert, how you deliver that science and technical work through some easier way that the public can understand. And typically we do write, for example, articles that are very distilled down and key to the point. That's how we reach the most of the audience. And the other thing is, as you know, today there's a lot of information through social media, through variety of media services. And people typically, they don't have that much of attention span. So you need to figure out how to package this in a very short, concise messaging. If you see most of our videos, actually they are, somewhere between 1 minute to 2 minutes. That's it. So for that, it looks like it's very small, but there are a group of professionals who are working on that. It takes some time to get that out, but you have to make it very precise, very, very small, short, and then also fact-based. I think that's what the group has been doing. And then the other part we're trying to do is not only the professionals who are in the United States, we are also working with, in Ethiopia, we have a couple of them there. Magdalawit is one, and Salabat is another one. We have journalists, we have engineers, we have public professionals, public affairs, IT professionals. So basically, like I said, this is a group who is volunteering their time in addition to their day work, trying to advance and trying to make sure that the public understand, in this case, the cause of Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam.
For Tebabu, Asefa, how can you define the role that the Ethiopian diaspora has been contributing for the construction of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam?
I'm looking at this from an American perspective. This is where I live. This is where I pay tax. This is where I've lived 2/3 of my life. So as an American with an Ethiopian origin, both identities are very important to me. And looking at it as an American, the American foreign policy is anchored, or the fundamental core value of the American foreign policy is promoting democracy, commerce, and development, not only in the U.S., all over the world. And related to that is also the peace and security of the region. So from that perspective, developing Gerd is not only for the benefit of Ethiopia, but all for the benefit of all the people of the Nile. And every social issue that we have today is an economic issue with a consequence of social reality. So for peace and prosperity, for the purpose of development, not only Ethiopia, but the people of the Nile, as well as the people of the world, people of the United States, supporting Gerd, it's supporting peace in the region, supporting peace globally, supporting economic development regionally, and supporting economic development globally. So from the well-being of the citizens of the world, it is a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer. So with that context, Ethiopians, Ethiopian Americans have to support, because peace and development means the U.S.-Ethiopia relation will be prosperous. Ethiopia's ability to grow commerce, Ethiopia's ability to sustain security in the region is very crucial. And Horn of Africa is a very strategic position. Ethiopia is a very strategic partner to the U.S. So from that context, just looking at it in a very general term, people, the Ethiopians, Ethiopian Americans, people of the world have to support the Gerd as an economic development, as a vehicle of fulfilling the basic human right. You know, going back to the earlier comparison, when you look at the contribution of Ethiopia to the Nile, literally from the data that I see produced by We Aspire, Ethiopia gives 80% of the water contribution, only benefits nothing, zero. And little girls in Ethiopia have to get up early in the morning and walk miles to fetch water instead of going to school. This is unacceptable. And Ethiopia is endowed with natural resources, but Ethiopia was not for a lot of reasons. It's geopolitics, it's international treaty, finance. So many reasons. Ethiopia was not allowed to exploit her natural resources. So that has costed the opportunity cost in terms of economic development in Ethiopia, in the region, as well as globally, has been hindered because Ethiopia was not able to exploit her natural resources. So looking at it in that simplistic form, as a layman, supporting Gerd beyond Ethiopia, beyond the people of the Nile, it is a peace, a vehicle of peace, a vehicle of economic development in the world. So that's why people have to support it on all levels.
Starting with the construction of the Grand Ethiopia Renaissance Dam has put into practice. Ethiopia has been trying to express that the dam has no intention of harming the downstream countries, especially Sudan and Egypt, rather to benefit its own country from its own resources. But Egypt has been complaining as the dam has a negative impact on the downstream countries. As one expert, what is your comment here in a sticky situation to reach on an agreement? This question is for Dr. Tebabu.
Ethiopia has been very clear in terms of the first phase, as well as in terms of, let me call it this way, the first year as well as the next year, and then the subsequent years that it would need to fill the dam. So from where we are sitting today, in fact, Mother Nature has been great in a way that we haven't seen this kind of flows in the Nile Basin. In fact, the Nile Basin, the Blue Nile, reached the highest in 100 years. If you go also from the White Nile, they just broke the record last May. So there is a lot of water within the basin. So upper countries as well as in Egypt. So what Ethiopia is planning to store next year is actually very, very small compared to what the Nile produces. One thing I would like to bring to attention to most folks is right now is the Aswan Dam, where they store the water for their water supply as well as electric production, right now it's full. It's not only full, it is discharging to Toshka lakes. We just did recently a calculation in terms of how much water actually evaporates because of, as you know, Egypt is very hot compared to Ethiopia. And our calculation shows that right now, if the current condition continues, they will be losing just for evapotranspiration almost 18 billion cubic meter. Last year, they lost about 15.8, 16 billion cubic meter. So if you compare that to Ethiopia right now, because the Gerd is at a low level, the amount of loss in evaporation is actually very low. It's about less than half, 0.5, less than half billion cubic meters. So when you see this, to me, it's not about the water. So we see there's enough water in the basin, not this year, next year as well, but it is more of a concern from Egypt that, if they let Ethiopia to do this, they are afraid that what could come to the other countries as well. To me, as I see the numbers, as I see the hydrology, as I see what's going on today, there isn't really something that makes them worry. If nothing else, actually helping them from flooding. We know what happens to Sudan. We can come back to that as well. But in terms of the concern for Egypt, there isn't there. That's not we are seeing from the numbers. There are several studies that came out recently as well, some widely circulated from Nature, for example, even at the worst scenario. So that means assuming if we are in a drought today, which we are not, even we are on that worst scenario, Egypt won't reach to what they call the demand water rationing phase. So they have different levels on how they operate, and they don't reach there. They have 41 billion cubic meter storage for flood. That space is full, like I said. So the 41 means basically Ethiopia could fill the dam in a couple of years if it is ready. Just from hydrologic perspective, I don't see that much of impact in Egypt. As again, the issue is not whether Ethiopia will fill it next summer as well as the summer after. In terms of impacting them, no. The issue is that setting precedents, others may follow Ethiopia, and then also they want to, in a way, to control how Ethiopia should operate. I think, to me, it boils down to other factors than hydrology. So they better come up with something else to explain that. The hydrology is not there.
Apart from the Grand Ethiopia Renaissance Dam support, in what ways are the Ethiopian diaspora living in the US and other places have been participating for the development and as well as promoting the overall national interest of Ethiopia in every perspectives? This may include the Ethiopian Trust Fund also. This question is for Mr. Tebabu Asefa.
Wow, this is good. In fact, let me quickly narrate what, put a synopsis. What I said earlier in the context of the technical component you put on the table. From what I look at it, before we get the technical component, before we get to the legal component, before we go to the treaties, first and foremost, everybody, all stakeholders from small to large, including the US and Europeans, have to recognize water and power is a basic human right, first and foremost. Next to that, Ethiopia's right to harness that for the benefit of her people is Ethiopia's sovereign right. That has to be respected. That has to be the tip of the conversation. And after that, we can talk about the fair and equitable utilization of the water. That is a matter of fairness. That's a matter of fairness. So the narrative has to be basic human right and sovereignty, and the technicality is important, the legality is important, the historical facts are important, but the campaign, the global campaign, the tip of if the campaign is narrow, the tip of the arrow has to be a lobbying and a PR campaign to tell the people of the world Ethiopia has been denied her rights. Actually, Ethiopia can sue the powers that made it difficult for Ethiopia to exploit our national resources, because for the last 100 years or whatever, we've paid tremendously by not the opportunity cost that Ethiopia paid is dear. So that said, now, as I said earlier, this can be, the Ethiopian diaspora can present this to their government, the US government, as a peace and development of the people of the Nile, as a vehicle to drive many other developmental issues through an investment, because this is a point of entry to redefine Ethiopia-America by default US-African economic development or engagement. And the US wants to play an active role. They've allocated $60 billion. Around the water, a whole lot of other projects can be developed. And we can take American democracy, American governance, American culture, American technology to redefine US-Ethiopia relations. And the Ethiopian diaspora has to sit on the table because we have the expertise. And this, by the way, it's not an aid. It is an investment package we demand, because that's the money we're paying. I've lived in this country for the last 30, 40 years, and I've paid dearly to the coffers of this nation, individually. We Ethiopians have paid dearly. We pay sales tax, income tax. We buy, we sell. We are part of this economic engine. We made America great at the expense of Ethiopia. So it's about time. We have never asked what's due to us. The time has come for us to sit and say, here is an investment opportunity to redefine US-Africa trade, not only for Ethiopia, for the peace and development of the region and the people of the Nile. We'll do so by utilizing that $60 billion allocated to redefine US-Africa relations and the $5 billion allocated for Ethiopia. We can sit on the table and first and foremost, build and finish the dam, respect Ethiopia's sovereignty, respect Ethiopians' basic God-given right, and then turn that into an investment vehicle which is beneficiary to all of us. Development of Ethiopia is the development of the region. Development of Ethiopia is the development of America. So we have, right now, I'm in conversation with American Sustainable Business Council. It's a chamber of commerce of sustainable businesses, over 300,000 businesses under their umbrella. They're ready to invest. So we have to bring them to the table. We have to take them. So around the Gerd, from tourism to manufacturing base, and providing Ethiopia's ability to produce, expand manufacturing base. That's why we're lacking. Currently, we can't even afford to roast our coffee and sell it in the global market. We're selling our green coffee. We do 90% of the work and only get 10% of the money we pay on this end. So it's an investment vehicle. So the role of the Ethiopian diaspora is to leverage their political capital, mobilize their ability to conduct a public awareness campaign, invite Americans to take part in this magnificent, the word Ethiopian America. Ethiopia is an ancient land endowed with natural resources. America is a young nation that turns stone to gold, an alchemy. Ethiopian American, if we can calibrate the best of the two for the benefit of each, it will be a massive contribution to fulfill the global United Nations Sustainable Development as an example to bring forth prosperity, a new era. We hope to the world. So the Gerd can be, as far as I'm concerned, the Gerd can be a vehicle of a renewed, sustainable engagement or virtuous exchange, for an exchange that can leverage the power of business, but to advance the most pressing and urgent issues we face here in Ethiopia and Africa as well, which is community-based economic and social development. So we have to bring the experts on the table, like Dr. Tirusew, who can articulate the nitty-gritty of the technicality. We can bring our lawyers who can articulate the fairness, the fair relationship. But at the tip of the campaign, has to be peace, development, sovereignty, and human rights. And maybe this thing beyond Ethiopia and the region can show an example to change, as I said earlier, the long aspired relationship of Africa with the US, to change it from an aid base to a trade base for mutual benefit. So in short, here is an opportunity for the diaspora. The diaspora has to invest on top of the money US has allocated. You know, right now we are about 2 million in the US. If 1 million of us, we have the capacity to, we have a purchasing and investment power of about $20,000 a year. We can invest and consume. Let me just take half of that, $10,000. If 1 million Ethiopians invest and consume $10,000 a year, that is $10 billion. Currently, 110 million Ethiopians only sell $4 to $5 million a year in the global market. 1 million Ethiopians living in America have from a 10 to $20 billion capacity to utilize, to make themselves wealthy while they help development in Africa, which is helping development in Africa is helping development everywhere. Unfortunately, the world is in crisis. There is economical challenge everywhere. There is political crisis everywhere. Underneath all that is poverty, economic injustice. Ethiopians' life matter. Ethiopia has to be not allowed, supported with an investment to harness her natural resources and provide the basic human necessity to excite development that will benefit everybody and everybody beyond Ethiopia, the people of the Nile, Africa, and the global world. So Ethiopian diaspora can take a lead role by capitalizing their political capital, social capital, economic capital, to be a force of change.
Doctor, why the Gerd negotiation is stalling many times, including the recent one? I mean, what's the big issue that negotiation is stalling currently, and on what technical matters they disagreed on?
Okay, so in terms, as we all know, this negotiation between Egypt, Ethiopia, and Sudan has been, going through for a long time. So I think it's important for people, before I start to answer where the sticky points are today, they need to at least to have an idea of where we were for the last 1 year. Remember, most people, they remember that Ethiopia, the three countries were negotiating through the observer of United States and World Bank. At the end, Ethiopia works from that out, and they started again. The reason they did that, for most people, it may not be clear. If you see some of the proposal that was out from Egypt, was basically trying to impose the 1959 agreement of water allocation between Sudan and Egypt. And that agreement pretty much allocated 100% for between the two, as well as for evapotranspiration, but nothing else for anybody else, including Ethiopia. So even though the different scenarios that they are showing in terms of the requirement, how much Ethiopia should release, if the flow is X, you release Y. So if you dig deep on those numbers, what you would find is that basically Ethiopia would be forced to agree 0% allocation for her. So this is a non-starter. That's why they walked out from that. After that, we have a few iterations, and then the African Union currently is also an auspice and mediating in a way. So that's restarted. Of course, we all know that Egypt went to the United Nations Security Council. They told them, African problem, solve it within Africa, and then they came back. Now, based on the media report, I see that there are some indications that in the next, the current phase also stalled. This seems to be based on media report. I hear that both Ethiopia and Sudan seems to agree that to at least have some expert part of this work coming out of Africa, but Egypt doesn't want to do that. So that's the sticky point they stop. Now, if we look at in terms of the technicalities, what they are, the big argument here is this. Egyptians and Sudanese know that what's Ethiopia planning to store next year and the year after has, like I said, has nothing to do with the quantity of water that will put them in danger. Not at all. They have enough storage, and they know the number is not that big. The issue is that how we can make sure the allocation that we have in 1959 that basically says 0% to Ethiopia should be, should be respected and honored going forward. That's not a good maths. Everybody forget about the experts. People in the street, they will tell you 85% is not equal to 0. So basically, Egypt is trying to impose that for a country that produces about 86% of the total volume of Nile, they want basically to have 0%. So the biggest agreement is they say, and most people, they confuse this. So I want to clear that. They talk about binding agreement. So what they mean by binding is that if a certain flow is agreed to be released every year, year in, year out, so that by definition is a water allocation. In fact, we at We Aspire, we wrote about this. We break it down a little bit so that the public understand. So Egypt is saying that, okay, you can have this, but you have to release this much, and that has to bind you. There is no way to bind a specific flow from Ethiopia to downstream countries without implying a water allocation. So that's the sticky point. That's the sticky point. It's not whether Ethiopia can fill it now for the next several years, and then Egypt still, they are not going to, like I said, the hydrology is great. Even next year forecast is the same like we have here. This year, because of we call a large scale atmospheric condition, La Nina we call. If you heard probably the North America tide record for number of storms that's coming in. So all this is related to the climate condition we have, that we also saw what happened in summer in Ethiopia. It's a lot of flow coming in from Niles. So we expect the same thing for next year. So they do know the water that Ethiopia is planning to withhold next year, 13.5. Again, that's smaller than even the evaporation that I just mentioned. So that's very small. So what they are trying to do is that they want to hold and make some of this release permanent. You can't do that without implying water resource allocation. So that's the big issue. So they are not agreeing in terms of, do we agree first just to fill? I think that's the position Ethiopia has, which I think we also wrote about that. I think even the European Union agrees on this. So agree on something just to fill the dam. And once you fill the dam, agree on operations and how to allocate water. But Egypt wants to do that right now using Gerd to negotiate water allocation. Gerd itself is just one project. How can you make a one project in one country? Ethiopia could build other projects as well. How can you use just one project to imply and use on the name of drought and release to basically hold Ethiopia's hand not to be able to use water beyond zero, basically? So that's the big issue. I think Ethiopia's position is supported by a lot of international community. The technicals is there. That's why nobody is buying Egypt's point in a way, because Ethiopia, everybody knows that, how can you produce 85% and you are going to get zero? So they know that. So what Ethiopia says, what the European Union agrees is just agree in terms of filling the dam, and then work not just between the 3 countries, all 11 countries, in order to know how much is the share. What's interesting to me is recently I was watching some of the Egyptian professionals that in the past they were just hiding this information through the release scenarios. They were just asking, hey, we need this much drought time. So in the name of drought is basically they are trying to fix that flows that allocate Ethiopia 0%. Now, this professional was asked, how much do you think is Ethiopia's share from the Blue Nile? They asked him. And he said, I don't think Ethiopia should get anything. 0. Okay, these are the people. This is a professor. This is a hydrologist. So he knows it, I know it, everybody knows it. That's not how it would work. I mean, you can't just say the whole country who produced this much, your share is zero because you have rain. It's not gonna fly. So I think this is the huge issue that Ethiopia is not. It's a non-starter where they are. And again, like I said, it's not a matter of whether Ethiopia can fill it today, next year. There is enough water in the system. They worry what would happen 20 years from now, 30 years from now, when the population grows, when use increases. What are they going to do? They just want to bind Ethiopia to that 0% allocation, which is a non-starter. That's why all the negotiations are stuck right now.
Doctor, can the Grand Ethiopia Renaissance Dam mitigate flooding problem for the downstream countries, especially for Egypt and Sudan? For instance, Sudan is highly affected in this summer by flood and caused more than 86 deaths in this country. So can the Grand Ethiopia Renaissance Dam mitigate flooding problem for the downstream countries?
Yes. This year we saw the Nile reaching the highest level it has been in 100 years. And we heard, unfortunately, for our brothers and sisters in Sudan, that they had tremendous damage. They suffered, they lost human beings, and they lost property. I think the estimate is more than 100 people died on this, more than 100, and then in millions of dollars damage that was coming. One of the things it brought the Gerd negotiation and the value of Gerd this summer was this extreme rainfall and flows that impacted, the entire basin. Like as I said, not only just in the East Africa, but all the way the north you have. So, but specifically in Sudan, the damage was terrible. I mean, it's heartening. People who are sad. One of the things we looked at, and I guess this is actually demonstrated. So before even we get the data, we run what we call as a hydrologist a scenario. A scenario is to say if Gerd flow or Nile flow is this much, and how much you can hold through Gerd, and how you can keep this flood within Gerd and Sudan won't be impacted. So we did this scenario and we put out a news through We Aspire actually that if Gerd was in place today, operational, it would have completely avoided this. Once we get the data from the Sudan, as soon as the Blue Nile gets into Sudan, later on we were able to get that data and looked at it. And what we needed to have during summertime was anywhere between 10 billion cubic meters to 15 billion cubic meter to help all these people suffering. Again, there is a lot of noise, there is a lot of political, there is a lot of personal interest going on in terms of Egypt and Sudan. But if you just step back and look at it from human perspective, look at it what Gerd could bring, this flood could have been completely, I would say it again, 100% could have been avoided if Gerd was in operation. In fact, the way Gerd works is that it holds a lot of water during summer, and then it uses that water to produce energy throughout the year. So according to the design, that the operation range for Gerd is between 49 billion cubic meter to 74. 74 is at full, and 49 is 2/3, about 66%. So there is 25 billion cubic meter space that typically will have during summer, and to hold that water, and then it pushes by producing electricity and then pass water. So what was needed this summer to avoid all this catastrophe in Sudan was between 10 to 15 billion cubic meter. Gerd will provide 25. What this means is that not just once in 100 years that we saw, a flood that came in once in 100 years, a flood that could be coming once in 200 and possibly once in 500 years could be completely avoided through Gerd. They know it, we know it. But again, the issue is that how you try to manage. Remember, Gerd is built to maximize energy. Maximizing energy means that you have to hold water up as much as you can, which happens to be the same thing you would do if you want a flood protection. So you have to hold water up, and you are going to fill it up. So based on the number we see, based on the Gerd capacity, based on the design that we see, this summer devastation could have been 100% avoided if Gerd was in operation. And remember, even that 4.9 billion cubic meter Ethiopia held at the beginning of the rainy season, in fact, it was just the first 2 months in July. Less than, 2 weeks. So less than 2 weeks, it was full. So that itself, that 4.9 billion cubic meters Ethiopia hold, in fact, it's holding more than that because it has to overflow the middle section of the dam. So that actually saved them a lot more life if it was not in place. Today we are seeing the value of Gerd in terms of flood protection. I have no doubt that going forward, and this is not my word, their prime minister is saying, their engineers are saying, their public affairs are saying, everybody's saying, they know it, we know it. If Gerd was today in operation, if Gerd had the capacity to hold everything as it's designed and operations, Sudan won't be impacted. So impact of flood to Sudan, it will be a thing of past. Remember, one of the things we have to remember is that Sudan gets this issue every year. Now it's up to the Sudanese people. Do you want to get, few help from here, there, or you want permanent solution? So Gerd actually brings to them a permanent solution in terms of their flooding problem. We are talking about hundreds of millions of dollars damage from flood that it's bringing to them. Otherwise, it's like the math doesn't add up. You lose 500 million, and then somebody gives you a donation for 1 million because they want to help you. You are flooded, but that's not how the science works. So I believe that if Gerd was in operation today, we wouldn't have seen this devastation we saw this summer in Sudan.
This question belongs to Mr. Tebabu Asefa. Coming to negotiation process, why Egypt want the U.S. prior mediator, why the African Union, AU can chair the negotiation fairly in the home country here in Africa?
That's a very good question. I guess it comes down to controlling the narrative and taking the narrative where they can, and there's an expression where they can get more for their buck, meaning America is a powerful nation that has a lot of influence in the world, in the global scene. And I think it is estimated, or people have suspected there was an international politics behind the motivation of President Trump to intervene in this negotiation in favor of Egypt. It was to me as an activist, I look like it's like we support you here, you support us on maybe in the Middle East. I'm speculating. So Egypt came to secure the support of the U.S. government in return of providing support for the U.S. Middle East ambition in the Middle East. So we were used as a pawn, and with all due respect, my dear president took a very miscalculated, short-sighted political move. As far as I'm concerned, it's contrary to the U.S. foreign policy. The U.S. foreign policy, the principle of it, like I said earlier, is to promote peace, democracy, and economic development, not only in the U.S., and in the global community as well. So again, it's contrary to the interest of the American foreign policy. The Trump administration chose to favor Egypt for some kind of political gain. And thanks God that the life of that regime has ended. In fact, that offensive remark the president make, listening to Dr. Tirusew about the flood, the first time I heard it, that was an advice of a suicide Because if you hit a water that is being contained, if you bomb it naturally, there's going to be a flood down the stream. That's a weapon. Even that advice was ill-advised. So I think Egypt is trying to control the narrative, and Egypt has allocated resources to do the PR and the lobbying, a very concerted and lobbying effort, because America is a superpower. And Egypt thinks in her political calculation, she's better off negotiating the favor of the US, intervention in her favor to put pressure on Ethiopia in favor of her interest. So there is a very miscalculated political move. It doesn't have any life, it just died now, something of a past right now, because we just worked hard to elect a new president. I have worked hard. Ethiopians nationwide have voted for Biden because we're offended by that reckless political action. That's a thing of the past. It doesn't matter. Now, the question is, what do we do moving forward? Unfortunately, we don't have the resources to hire a PR firm, a lobby firm like the British do, I mean the Egyptians do, to control the public discourse, the narrative in their favor. You know, we Ethiopians are very humble. We don't even speak loud, leave alone brag, or leave alone lie. In the world politics, that is the tool they use. So we have to be savvy, and we can use citizen lobbying. This government, the US government, is government of the people, by the people, for the people, which means we have a right to send a representative to the chambers of power, tell that representative what kind of policy to write, and tell that representative what kind of money to allocate to that policy. So if we can utilize our ability to capitalize our citizen lobbying privilege, we can overcome that hard money paid high lobbyist effort, because we can capture the imagination of the American population. By the way, we also have to do, we can do neighborhood campaign, public awareness. If each Ethiopian American tells 10 to 15, 20 friends and neighbors using the information we Aspire has produced, and get the attention of the American population to invest, to support. I wish to start such a campaign in Maryland next year. Bring my friends, my American friends, to the light, to the fact, and give them an opportunity to participate. So what Egypt has done, kidnapping the conversation from the African Union to America, was just a miscalculated political move, and it is corrupted right now. It's bankrupt. It's a thing of a past. It was only last month, but as far as the American political psyche is concerned, it can be 100 years ago. Now there is a new chapter, a new day. We have a new government. We have worked hard to put this government. So we, the Ethiopian Americans, have to mobilize we have to be civically engaged and position the Gerd issue as an issue of human rights, sovereignty, and economic engine, and force, literally, I mean it, twist the arms of our policy makers to write a policy and put money in it, because they will benefit as well. Everybody will benefit. So that is the way I see it. The US intervention on that dialogue is a thing of the past. It's a new day and a new page, a new chapter.
This question belongs to you, Doctor. By now, the country will not able to hold more than 4.9 BCM, which is billion cubic meter, with the current capacity. Does Ethiopia plan next year of storing 14.5 impact significantly downstream countries? And also, can Ethiopia do so or construct another bar without reaching an agreement with the negotiators, which means Sudan and Egypt?
Yes, Ethiopia's plan for next year, 13.5, that gives about 18.4 in total from what we had this year, 4.9. So as far as hydrology is concerned, That should not be a problem at all. One thing we are seeing right now is where we are currently, because of this strong La Nina, we call this a big picture disturbance from the atmospheric circulation. We expect that there is about 77 to 80% chance even this is going to be the same thing going next year as well. So next summer, the expectation is as well high rain in Ethiopia as well. One thing people need to understand is the Nile Basin is huge. The Nile Basin is big. So the way weather, the way climate impacts is different. In fact, you would see early spring, a lot of rain, more on the upper regions, you know, like Uganda and so on. And then in fact, Lake Victoria was breaking record in May. So there is no really direct correlations in terms of when this rain is coming throughout the basin. In fact, this gives a lot of opportunity for the basin countries to work together, because you have this range of climate, range of weather conditions that you can try to leverage and then use water resources in a sustainable and equitable fashion. So based on what we see, Ethiopia's, I think what is for next year basically on the way is Ethiopia's ability, and based on their construction, based on the plan, there's a lot of work to do. And if they are on that place to be able to hold enough water next year, additional 13.5 billion cubic meter, that should not impact downstream. Again, this is not an issue of whether there is enough water in the system or not. This is an issue of setting precedent, setting that Ethiopia later on, you know, could also say, hey, I'm holding this 13.5 now, 10 billion cubic meters after that. Ethiopia could as well say that, you know, it has its own share as well. But from hydrologic perspective, from the weather, from the storage in the system, we see no problem for Ethiopia to be able to hold the planned number 13.5. So not only the Aswan High Dam is full, like I said, it is full. 41 billion cubic meters that typically is for flood is full. But remember, they have also a lot of resources from groundwater as well. One thing is lost in translation. Most people, they don't know is that there is a lot of water that gets into groundwater, not only in Egypt, in Sudan as well. So when you think about use of water in a sustainable and equitable manner, you have to actually think in terms of surface water and groundwater. The UN 1997 convention, there is a reason they call it water course. They call it water course, and they define it as a surface water and groundwater because it's connected. When water flows in the river, as you can imagine, it's not in the bottom, it's not concrete. It's a natural soil. So it gets into the ground. So some of them, it gets into the ground. So therefore, there is tremendous amount of water underground stored as well in Egypt. So based on all this, the fact that, you know, both lakes, Victoria, Lake High Aswan Dam, the groundwater high levels throughout the basin, there should not be any issue for Ethiopia to hold an additional 13.5 billion cubic meters next year. Nothing at all. So what they are talking about is something else related with, you know, precedent and worrying about what happened in 20 years, 30 years. All this drought, we heard them. You know, sometimes the media, I agree with my friend here, is that we have to control the media. If you see, for example, Al Jazeera, they have these scenarios, basically not scientific. They run whatever they call these scenarios. If there is 1 billion meter cube reduction, hundreds of millions of dollars lost in Egypt. That's not true. So I think the issue is the narrative. The issue is beyond today, looking at 20 years, 30 years, what happened. The issue is control. The issue is not sharing what we have in the region. Otherwise, from hydrology, from where we are today, what's expected next year, I don't see any problem in terms of you know, impacting downstream countries if Ethiopia go ahead and hold as planned the 13.5 billion cubic meters next year.
Do you think that the green legacy being underway for the last 2 consecutive years in Ethiopia, initiated by Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, have its own positive impact for the Grand Ethiopia Renaissance Dam? And coming to the climate change issue, Egypt typically talks about drought. How does the climate change impact in the Nile Basin countries in Ethiopia? And is that a realistic concern for those countries?
These are great questions that you asked me. Two things you asked me. One is regarding the green legacy and how that helps and or impacts in terms of the siltations, and then the other one you talked about climate change. So let's pick up first the green legacy. I am a professional, a hydrologist and scientist, and I would like to raise a little bit of alarm. It's not panicking, but it's concerning. The reason is that most of the picture we saw that there is a tremendous amount of sediment that comes through the Abai, Blue Nile. In fact, the Amharic name is black, Tukur Abai, so Black Nile. The reason for that is there is so much sediment, soil erosion that gets into that river gives that name. In fact, there is entire industry in Sudan that is doing based on that for brick, for example. So it is a concern for us because what happens is if you have a lot of these sediments, it's going to eat up the storage space that you put in. In fact, the 4.9 billion cubic meter that we saw last year, at the end, it would end up being storage for that sediment. So the concern is that the engineers, hydrologists, they do this calculation, but it's not an exact science. Because it depends how much rain comes in, how much the tree is in the watershed. So there is an estimate. So based on the current design of Gerd, the estimation is about 270 tons of sediment in every year. That is expected to be about 10% of the storage every 50 years. So that's the estimate. Again, this is not an exact science. So it could be more or less. That's where now the green legacy comes into play. If we are able to work and bring everybody for this, again, this is a great initiative for Ethiopia, but also remember this cannot be sustained as a volunteer. So we have to figure out how to have this permanent in terms of bringing NGOs, bringing other groups to continue to do that. Then we will be able to reduce this siltation. If you look at today, most of the dams in Sudan, for example, 30 to 40% of their storage is filled by silt. So basically they are losing the ability to produce power, reduced, and then as well as the storage. So this is coming. As I said, as it's our responsibility as a professionals, as hydrologists, we need to, put the alarms so that people understand this. All this effort, all this unbelievable effort, not only from Ethiopians, inside the country, all over the world. This is a huge project for us. So we have to take this seriously in terms of the sediment, and the green legacy is one way to control that. There is a saying, it's treatment, prevention is better than treatment. So if once it gets in, you're going to cost you a lot of money if you want to take it out from the reservoir. So knowing that, the more we work through that, it doesn't have to be one year, but it has to be sustained. Then we will give more life to Gerd, that it will store more water and continue to produce more water. So that's huge. I cannot underestimate this, and we have to put the flag, like I said. This is a serious issue that we have to tackle. Okay, regarding the climate change, there is a lot of talk, and if you see in terms of the Egyptian, for example, they talk about drought, they talk about what happened this, what happened that, climate's going to change. True. I actually worked in the Nile Basin. I looked at all the future scenarios. These are big global models. They tell you what happened in the future, depending on what happened in the future in terms of carbon emission and other greenhouse gases, what happened, how would that change? So in short, what we see in the Nile Basin, and specifically in Ethiopia, that the rain is not going to change a lot in Ethiopia. It may shift its timing, so that means you may get a flood, you may get drought. In terms of the total amount, is not going to change. One thing is clear, is that the temperature is going to rise. So what does it mean? It means that if the temperature is rising, then you would be losing more water to evaporation or evapotranspiration. So when you look at climate change into the future, in fact, what not only Ethiopia, the entire Nile Basin, what they need to do is they need to build more dam. In fact, I've been saying this. What Ethiopia, Egypt, the Egyptian scientists agree with me. Actually, we should build more dam upstream of Gerd, more dams, because what happens in the future is going to be a big swing in terms of you get flood or drought. So you build more dam, you can store at high level. One thing I should mention, the temperature is forecasted to be warmer. The climate is warming. So higher temperature means you will be losing a lot of water today, and even more in 20 years, 50 years, if you store that water in Aswan High Dam. They know it. Today, they are losing about 18 billion cubic meter to evaporation. Last year, they lost 15.8 billion cubic meters in Aswan. An increase in temperature simply says that they will be even losing more water at Aswan High Dam. Where do you need to store it? That's where you need to store it in Ethiopia. So in a way, climate change, nobody wants the climate change to happen because there is a lot of implication, but actually Ethiopia is in a better position in a way to help the entire Nile Basin to store at a place that it's relatively cool. Even with increased temperature, you don't lose. And then you build more dams upstream of Gerd, because like I said, 86% is coming from Ethiopia. So for climate change, we call it adaptation. What you need to do is build more dam. Build more dam. Where? Upstream of Gerd. I think the science is very clear. They agree with us as well. They're scientists. Now the question is, how can Ethiopia and others collaborate and make this happen for the benefit of everyone? I think that's the big issue in terms of climate change and how you can adapt into climate change in the future.
For Mr. Tebabu Asefa, what kind of activities are planned to be undertaken in the future in related to the Gerd, the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam Committee of the Diaspora living in the US, regarding the construction of the Gerd, financing and public awareness creation works? What kind of activities are planned to be undertaken for the future?
That's a very good question. Before I answer that, let me answer Dr. Truna. You framed it. The question you framed from the climate perspective. To me, to be honest with you, every challenge we're facing in Ethiopia and Africa, political challenge, social, climate, it's all an economic challenge with the political consequence, social, environmental consequence. So the driving element underneath economic empowerment for the benefit of all. In the context of climate change, in fact, in the long run, people of the Nile region, people of the world, it will be a wonderful investment for them to green Ethiopia, plant trees in Ethiopia. Carbon credit, right now the US, the global industrialized nation are looking for carbon credit. Planting tree in Ethiopia, not only good for Ethiopia, it's good for the Nile region. It will control flood. It will control the water situation. So even for climate, the answer is utilizing Gerd. That's number one. So coming back to the question, to me, as I said, currently Africa has many challenges and all an economic issue. In fact, the global awareness of Black Lives Matter, if you break it down, in the global Black Lives Matter sits Ethiopian Life Matter. Literally, Ethiopian Life Matter. Ethiopian Life Matter not only for Ethiopia, for the world. If Ethiopians are not given the opportunity to harvest their natural resources and build prosperity and tackle the challenge of poverty. Of course, they will go to other places. Europeans are concerned about Africans fleeing their country. Why are they fleeing their country? Because the global global geopolitics and economic madness has made it difficult for people of Africa who live in a Garden of Eden to go to other places because they were handicapped from not utilizing their natural resources. Saying that, what the diaspora can do, the President Trump held a $130 million aid. Keep it. We don't want aid. We want a $1 billion investment on Gerd for environmental, social, and political crisis that we're facing. They are directly responsible. And I look at it, I left Ethiopia at a young age, and I've lived in many countries, most of it in the US. And from my perspective, the challenge we face in Ethiopia and in Africa, as the Prime Minister has articulated it, is poverty. Poverty is our challenge. The cause of poverty is not because we're not working hard. It's not because we don't have the resources. It's because the international economic and political economic order has made it difficult for us to exploit our natural resources. Africa is endowed with natural resources, and the wealth created by the developed countries, is created at the expense of Africans being marginalized. We produce all the resources we got. We can just take one example. I work on coffee. We do 90% of the work. I've seen Ethiopian farmers, the farmer, his wife, and his children, working from sunrise to sundown. They do 90% of the production, but they only get 1% of the money the consumers, we Ethiopians, pay on this end. And the businesses that sell coffee to us, the sons and the daughters of the coffee farmer, do 10% of the work and keep 90% of the money that we pay. We Ethiopians, I did some rough calculation a while back, we Ethiopians in America give about $80 to $100 million a year to the coffee, specialty coffee industry in America. So the time has come for us to think growing, to solve Ethiopian problem. As I said earlier, 110 million people only get $5 billion from the global market because we were not, just like the coffee, all our commodities, our manufacturing base is weak. We're selling our commodities dirt cheap. We're not allowed to harness our natural resources. When Ethiopia is poor, the world is poor. So Ethiopian Americans can make an argument on so many levels. Mutual benefits. The globe is one village. There is no flag as far as the economy is concerned. It's one ecosystem. You mess with one side of the ecosystem, you pay price on the other. So Ethiopian Americans are at a very powerful position to make that articulation. Capitalizing their social capital to connect with the neighbors, with Americans, invite Americans to participate, to partake, not only in the Gerd, and many other Gerd-related developments around Gerd. An investment. Let America keep the $130 million and put $1 billion investment. We can do that if we play our cards right, because it's an investment. We want an investment. We paid for the money, by the way. I demand it, and because I have a right to determine where that money goes. So Ethiopian Americans, of course, we need a little money because the Egyptians are paying tons amount of money for lobbying. We just need seed money to control the narrative, to campaign a grassroots citizen lobbying, telling every Ethiopian in America to call their senators and their congressmen and put a proposal on the table, invite American sustainable businesses to partner with us, sell American technology. Everything we have is for sale. Ethiopia can sell culture. Ethiopia can sell tourism. Ethiopia is a wonderful place. When people go to Ethiopia, they get amazed. The people of the world know so little about Ethiopia. So what we can do, Ethiopian Americans, is leverage the power of business leverage our investment, purchasing, remittance economy, invested in partnership with other American sustainable businesses to divert or to channel out of that $60 billion a year. We can, at least in the coming 3 to 5 years, we should be able to control at least 2-3 billion of it to go to an investment to transfer American technology, know-how, expertise. I think from the Ethiopian side, I think the Ethiopian Diaspora Trust Fund should invest a little money so that we will be able, this campaign, I do have a campaign that I outlined called Ethiopian Diaspora for Peace and Development for the People of the Nile. It is a public awareness and a citizen lobbying effort to underscore the importance of investing on Ethiopia is an investment in the global world. Seeing Ethiopia prosper, the old model of exploiting for selfish interest will take us to hell. It can't be sustained anymore. Ethiopians are sick and tired of being denied utilizing their natural resources. This is not an issue between Ethiopia and the Nile. This is an issue of the global scale. Ethiopian life matters. Enough. That's it. Enough. We have the political power. We have the economic base. We have the mind. We can shake it and bake it, as they say in America. We can shake it and bake it. So again, I will stress every challenge we face and I speak as a humanitarian, a global citizen, an American with a profound Ethiopian identity. Every issue that we see in Ethiopia, from political crisis to environmental crisis, social crisis, is a consequence of the economic injustice. Actually, we Ethiopians, if we want to solve our problem, we got to wake up and expand our political presence, our economic space in the global scale. Sell our kolo like all the other stuff, sell our talla or katikala. That's what we do. When you buy Black Label, it's nothing, it's a fancy drink. Why do we go? The other day I went to an Ethiopian store here in Silver Spring. The Ethiopian store that sells misr, lintel, and chickpea comes from Turkey and India. I asked the storekeeper, why aren't you sourcing from Ethiopia? Well, the one that comes from Ethiopia is not clean. So tell business leaders to collect their investment and clean it. By the way, we have to stop sending money to Ethiopia because this remittance economy, because we send so little money and it goes back home. It doesn't help our folks. Our folks use that money. Of course, they use it for a lot of relevant element, but I'll say, to dramatize it, we buy the Chinese good, we buy the Black Labels. The money goes back, increasing our foreign currency addiction. But if we can invest it to expand Ethiopian market space in the global market by providing the farmer an investment opportunity. For instance, I have a project that I'm advancing called Blessed Coffee that aspires to give small coffee farmers organized under cooperative union to invest $6. I'm working with 400,000 right now. I've given them an opportunity to collectively invest $6 per farmer, which is $2.4 million. And I can match that fund on this side, build a roasting facility that will be owned by the farmers with me and my investors. And then we can sell the coffee directly to the consumer, control the value chain, and give the farmer the share he deserves. If we can do that with the misr, with the lintel, with all the other things, all the cultural products that we have, expanding, telling Ethiopian story from the culture to this political narrative, getting the appetite of the American people, the global community to experience Ethiopian culture, Ethiopian experience, and collecting our money to invest on this side, that is the only thing that can save Ethiopia. To me, no political ideology will, as far as I'm concerned as an activist, I dare say, if there is hope for Ethiopia, it is the hardworking farmer who is marginalized from the global world. And if there is anybody who can help it, it is the Ethiopian diaspora that has a little extra money. As I said earlier, In 5 years, the Ethiopian diaspora in America alone is estimated to be close to 3 million with the third and the fourth generation. If 2 million invest $20,000, invest and consume, using their purchasing, investment, and remittance economy, $20,000, that's $40 billion. If God comes and blesses us currently, and we Ethiopians stand as their brothers and sisters, at best, we've only solved 30% of our problem. 70% of our problem is directly related to our marginalized presence in the global market, politically, socially, economically. So with that, I say to the Ethiopian diaspora in the US and the Europe, anywhere for that matter, we are paying tax, we are voters, we can demand, we can reshape, we can capitalize our political capital, social capital, investment capital, remittance economy, and put on the table a proposal to have the US-Ethiopian relations is driven not by aid, but investment for mutual benefit. So my advice is, this is a wake-up call, actually. Every crisis, perceived or conceived or real, is an opportunity to push a new, innovative, sustainable idea. I see it as an opportunity. Ethiopians have come here. We've never been here before. We are a young generation in America, but we are from the street vendor to professionals like you. We're everywhere, and we are a vital member of this great nation. We are making America great. We have made America great. It's about time we collectively ask what's due to us, because promoting Ethiopia is promoting the peace and development of the region and the world as such. In fact, even America, because if you allow me to provide my African farmer to collectively pull its resources and invest with me, not only he can take care of himself, he can also help me create jobs here. See, so Ethiopia's vision, Ethiopia's rehabilitation and development can only come about with the leadership of the farmer that has sustained us. And that can only happen when we, the diaspora, recalibrate our investment. Make sure every time, in America, I choose a president every 4 years, right? But every day I pull my wallet, I vote 10 times, because every time I pay, it's a vote I'm casting. I have to ask myself, where is that money going? Does it benefit my people? Am I investing it? So the Ethiopian diaspora has an opportunity to lead the Ethiopian gabere, the Ethiopian farmer, and his sweat for the last thousands and thousands of years will salvage Ethiopia out of the crisis we're facing. And we Ethiopians, we have to come together and fight in the global market. Unless we break the marginalization of our existence politically, culturally, economically, in the global world, there's no peace, sustainable peace. So to me, from small to large, here is an opportunity. Gerd is the first trumpet for the rehabilitation, awakening of Ethiopians at home and abroad. And the diaspora is sitting in a wonderful privilege to lead this people movement.
Doctor, when the Grandiose Renaissance Dam Gerd reduces siltation for the downstream countries, the sediment will be deposited in the dam itself, which means it will bring a lot of problems, and estimately 270 metric tons per year of sediment is expected to be deposited annually. If so, as one expert of the area, in what ways that the expertise on the area can manage siltation problem in the dam?
Yeah, the siltation issue is a huge one. The way to treat it, if it is, we are trying to treat the problem once it is in Gerd, that's very costly. Typically, you are talking about, hundreds of millions of dollars, basically, if not, So for Ethiopia, the design itself account for some. So basically what it means is that we have time to execute our plan in terms of, green legacy and others to control the sediment at the watershed level. So there is time in terms of, but it's still where, alarming, it's a warning things where we're pulling up, but there is time. There is I remember one of my professor, I came from Arba Minch University, and one of my professor, he was explaining us that, you know, the use of data and so on. And at that time, there are not a lot of rivers. They have actually measurement. One thing I remember from him that I will never forget, his name is Dr. Admasu. He said that if you want to build something, start today. So even before you put things in place, you have 1 year worth of data. Again, if we are trying, typically in our profession, you need 20 years, 30 years of data to say something about the future. In the Nile River, we have hundreds of years of data. So all our knowledge about the watershed, about the flow, is based on how much record we have. The more data we have, the more information we have what's going on in that area, including the watershed. But some places we don't. But that should not stop us. So for siltations and for those problems, which I consider really a grave concern for me, that there is estimate. The estimate is now, you know, every 50 years, you are going to lose 10% of the storage capacity. That's huge. And also that could be higher or less. We can start today. We have a lot of universities. I know that even in Ethiopia, including, you know, Arba Minch, Addis University, you go, you know, in the West, Bahir Dar, Mekelle, you have all these universities which are really expanded in their knowledge of how to manage this. They could be using some of their pilot studies. We have to support them. In terms of how much the actual sediment transportation is into the river. The design is based on what we know in the past. What's going to happen in the future depends in so many things. I can give you one example. If the rain, the sediment calculation that says how much silt gets into the Gerd depends on how much is the rainfall and how heavy is that rainfall. Again, this is based on what we know. In the future, it could change. So as we prepare and as we put some allocation in terms of what we can handle over the next 50 years, like I said, we're going to lose 10% of that storage in 10 years. It could be more than that if rainfall change, because now you have more sediment comes in. What we need to do is, in addition to doing the green legacy, putting plants in place that hold the sediment, we have to also support all the researchers, the universities there, and actually confirm in reality how much sediment is getting. Typically what we do here, where I live in Florida, we have models, we put all these big projects, hundreds of millions of dollar project, but you don't stop there, and you calibrate, you adjust what your estimate was. So along, you know, being a major concern for me in terms of siltation and sediments, this is not an issue just only for Ethiopia. This is everywhere else. But what we see in the Blue Nile, in Abai River, the sediment transport is a lot. I mean, shockingly a lot. I mean, if you see some of here in the north, you see many rivers, I pay attention, they look like a swimming pool, blue. Why? Because you don't have that much of sediment coming in. I'm not saying we will be there, you know, next year. I'm not saying we'll be even 5 years from now. I'm not saying maybe we won't be there in 10 years, but we need to do something now. And I think what the government puts through this green legacy is a great way of addressing this. This is an issue. I think people, they may not put that much in terms of how it may impact us. It's going to reduce the storage we can put in. It's going to reduce how much power we can put in. Because what happens is now you have to release. Your dam is going to full quick in terms of the water if you have more siltation there. So it's not panicking. I don't want to scare people. But I have to put the alarm in a way that this is something we have to start today. We have the time. We have already started this. It has to figure out. We have an article. Go in and check it out. And myself and Magdalawit, we wrote about this. We were very concerned. We have there is an article regarding this issue, sediment issue in the Nile, and some example from even Egypt and Sudan, other areas as well. This is a concern for me, but it's not something you are concerned and stop. We can do something about it. We can do something tangible to reduce this, so that we don't lose this big investment. As you know, there's nothing for Ethiopia in terms of the amount of money people they put. We have seen this, not just the professionals, not the money we borrow or make from other places. People from all walks of life, they spend their life saving on this project, and we would want it to function as it is designed, and it's going to open up tremendous amount of power. Again, this also related with, once we start to generate, the government may have more money. I understand there's always, you are tight. You have to allocate your money on some places. And another thing, it may not be raised as well, is also the water hyacinth issue with Lake Tana. That's another big issue as well. I think working on Mboch, as they call it, the water hyacinth, as well as the sediment problem regarding within the Blue Nile Basin, this has to be a priority for Ethiopia, for everyone. It has to be a priority if you want it to be successful, to think that to bring this economy that we think it will bring. I think it will bring, but we should not lose sight of the tremendous amount of impact this siltation could bring and reduce its capacity. We don't want that, and I think we are raising the flag right now, not panicking, but we are raising the flag that we should do a lot on that area.
Dr. Tirusew Asefa and Tebabu Asefa, thank you for joining me. I'm almost close to end with my questions. And lastly, if you have a general message for the people and government of Ethiopia and for stakeholders, you are highly welcomed.
Yes, before I give my last remark, I'd like to thank what we aspired as. I'd like to thank all those experts and professionals who've been, getting involved on this issue. It's really encouraging to see that. And I also I'd like to express my gratitude to OBN for giving us this opportunity. That said, my message, this is to the Ethiopian government. The Ethiopian government foreign policy in terms of investment should not be come invest in Ethiopia. It should be invest on growing Ethiopian business in the global market. That's where the money is. The diaspora shouldn't go back home, take the little money that we have, go back home and open restaurants and hotels and compete with the locals. We should use our money to grow Ethiopian market presence on this side by investing on Ethiopians' manufacturing base, on Ethiopians' ability to export. On my last trip to Ethiopia, I had the privilege to meet with the head of the Ethiopian Federal Cooperative Agency that has 90,000 cooperatives, representing 21 million people. 21 million people, 90,000 cooperatives. They have so many products and services. You can go down to their office and see the products showcased. All these products are commodities. We can add value, we can package them, we can sell them in the global market. So my advice to the government is first and foremost to rethink its foreign investment policy. Ask people wherever they are, they don't even have to come to Ethiopia. They can invest, but they have to give a good share to the producer. They have to do it in partnership with the farmer. They have to do it in partnership with the Ethiopian businesses. And Ethiopian businesses, they have to stop the mentality of brokerage by moving one item to another, making $1 million. They have to invest and grow Ethiopian manufacturing base and bring that product, partner with the diaspora, make money on this side. My advice to the Ethiopian businesses, my advice to the Ethiopian government, my advice to the Ethiopian diaspora is to retell the Ethiopian elegant story, redefine Ethiopian cultural vibrancy, empower Ethiopians' marketing presence by investment and by purchasing. And of course, Gerd sits at the middle. Gerd sits at the middle. And I see this hope. I see an opportunity. But we're all in a position of service, and we have to put the greater good at our core interest. It cannot, the old model of I take money from you, I exploit you, is not sustainable. At one point, you're going to say, to hell with you. America to benefit, America has to respect Ethiopian sovereign right. America has to recognize Ethiopians' human right for their basic need. Currently, the world is talking about access to the internet. 60% of Ethiopians don't have clean water. Ethiopians' life matter in the global scale. And here is an opportunity to hell with aid and investment. And so my advice is, we Ethiopians, we have a wonderful opportunity at hand. We all have to come together and play the game in the global market. Maybe then, if we take the narrative, the Ethiopians, the problem that we face in Ethiopia is a problem of poverty that emanates from our marginalization in the global market. Maybe then we will see the importance of respecting each other and being inclusive. And Madammer can only be true if Ethiopians put their mind, their focus on the opportunity at hand and the global market. And all of us, from the policymakers to investors, have an opportunity to help our farmers who have helped us sustain this land. And the farmer, the ideology, the political philosophy of a farmer farming, getting access to the global market is what will give us an opportunity to bring prosperity to Ethiopia. And sometimes I wonder, I'd like to establish a party called Farmer Party, because everything rides on that. And Gerd is the crown jewel of this. And the technical experts we have, the legal experts we have, they all have a role to play. We're like one big symphony, and we all have to play to the song, the same tune. And the farmer has to conduct our moves.
Yeah, in terms of my final message here is, first of all, I would like to thank OBN giving us this opportunity. I think this is great work you all are doing. It's important that we, as an expert, as well as my friend here as well, we communicate with the public, and you are working this, and we appreciate that. I have a couple of messages in terms of overall, where the Gerd negotiation is going and so on. One of the things I want to mention is that we do have people who are working, negotiating him, the technical people, experts, which we have, commendable knowledge of this. Sometimes it's important that we have to give them the space they need. One thing that came to me yesterday was as Vice President becomes President-elect Joe, the question was for his campaign managers was that they heard that not only in the United States, but all over the world, they were messaging the campaign and telling them how to run the campaign. You will be hearing thousands of people saying their own opinion on how this should be done. But the campaign stuck with their big picture, and they won. So it's important for us that to recognize we have a great team of negotiators and technicals, and we have to support them. We have to be 100% behind them. And then also we may agree or disagree on some of the, the things that come up. But as a professionals, especially those of us who knows whether it's hydrology, whether it's a law, we have to respect those and help them as well. At the end of the day, you will have something that's not going to satisfy 100% of the people. But I'm confident on their negotiation. I'm confident on the technical teams. Ethiopia as well has the truth, because everybody knows that, providing 85% of water and somebody's trying to tell you get only 0%, that's clear. So that's what one of my big message. The other one is, as typically happens, what I see from the media and so on, and I thank you for bringing us today as well, is that we need to continue to educate the public, not only ours, but outside as well. The more people knows the issues, the more they know the gritty-nitty things a little bit in a way they can understand, then the more can they support us as well. Not just for Ethiopian. I know Ethiopians support us, 100%, but we need outside as well. I was very impressed. In fact, this group has reached out with a lot of Zoom meeting, a lot of activity. They answer questions. We have to continue to do that, including, the Ethiopians that some may have a different opinion and so on. So I truly believe that we have the truth in our side. We have the hydrology. We have a competent technical and negotiating team. I can only see a win on this, and I think we have to give them some space in terms of what they have to do, and then I think it will play out. I think we are holding a truth, and we have to stick with that. There is no other way. So that's my message.
Thank you very much for joining me and for your time and beautiful thoughts. I really appreciate your kindness and commitment. Again, thanks for joining me. Hopefully, we'll keep connected on discussing different times on different agendas of the country. Many thanks for joining me, and thank you very much.
The same thing. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Dear viewers, this will bring us to the end of this edition. I'm Wandamu by hosting and producing the program for you. We'd like to have you to have a beautiful stay with Obin remaining his programs. Thank you.